Namaste. I'm Sadhna. I'm working as a teacher in a private management school in Puttur, Dakshina Kannada, and I teach English and science. I share my surname with Mr. Arvind Hebar, on whose Facebook page I am giving this talk. He is my husband's uncle. The whole family is very passionate about classical music, and they've done a commendable job by creating this Facebook page in the memory of the daughter Ranjani Hebar. Ranjani Hebar herself is a very good classical vocalist, and I've heard of her, but I've never known her personally. But still, we share something in common. Both of us share a common twist in our lives. Both of us had cancer. I survived while she unfortunately succumbed to it. Whenever I hear of people who have succumbed to cancer, I feel guilty. I wonder why I was given a second chance. Why was I able to survive? Living with this guilt also becomes very difficult. And then we end up taking a solace in philosophy, in fate, in destiny. Whatever has to happen will definitely happen. Nothing can change that. If I were to die, nothing or nobody could have saved me. And if I had to live on, nothing could have changed it otherwise. I still don't know the purpose of having been given this chance, but I have made it my aim to help people who are suffering a similar fate, or the family of people who are suffering a similar fate. Now, let me tell you my story in brief. My tryst with cancer was about 7 years ago. As I said, I stay with my family, my husband and my 2 children in Puttur. And my mother's house is in Bangalore. That summer vacation, I was in Bangalore to attend a family function. There one day, suddenly out of the blue, I located a lump in my breast. I was stunned, and I heard my first warning bell. It was a mixture of emotions. I felt despair, helplessness, hopelessness, pain, shock, guilty, shamefulness, and most of all, the thought that I may not be able to live long. I couldn't even actually share all these thoughts with my relatives because we were in the middle of a function. So I went along my duty, but without an emotion in it. Meanwhile, I called up my doctor in Puttur and told her everything. She said it may not be anything. Maybe I was just overworking on it. She said, since you're 48, you may be in early menopause. So once you come back to Puttur, let's give a checkup and rule it out. I really wanted to believe her, but that science in me would not allow me to believe it. It's also happened that I was there in Bangalore during my birthday, and so there was a celebration. Even during the celebration, the only thought I had was, will this be my last birthday on earth? Will this be the last new dress I would be wearing? And what would my children and my husband do on this day next year? All negative thoughts. And then finally, after 1 week, I came back to Puttur and I told my husband and cried my heart out. He kept telling me, don't diagnose yourself. Let's not misjudge it. But I just wouldn't listen. I refused to listen to him. Unfortunately, it happened that my doctor was not in station during those times. And I finally went to her after a week. I went there with lots of hope. She gave me a physical and said, Sadhna, I think you have to consult a doctor in Bangalore. I will refer you to Dr. Rohan Chandragatti in Father Muller's. Then I heard my second warning bell. Rohan Chandragatti is an oncosurgeon, a cancer specialist. Completely dazed, my husband and I came back home in complete silence. None of us had the courage to speak to each other. Till yesterday, it was my diagnosis. But today, a person in authority gave me an implication of what was in store for me. And then we spent days in prayers, in pujas, and all this. My husband comes from a rural area, so he is familiar with a lot of native medicines. So I tried everything, taking in and applying. It was 3 or 4 days later that I got an appointment to go to Mangalore, and finally we went there. Dr. Gatti told me that he also gave me a physical and told me that to come to any conclusion, we'll have to conduct certain tests. I was very hopeful because it was a small positive. He hadn't told me that I had cancer. Even though it was not a positive, I was hopeful. I had to undergo blood tests, x-rays, mammogram, sonography, and another thing called FNAC, fine needle aspiration. I said, fine, let's do it. So FNAC, actually, they prick into the tumor and check those cells for its potency. The result came in the afternoon. In the report, they write an impression. In the impression, it was written, the tumor may be benign. I was relieved for the first time in so many days. That means my tumor may not be cancerous. Happily, I took my report and gave it to Gatti. He pricked my balloon. He said, FNAC can give you only 60% conclusion. But for 100%, we have to do a true cut analysis. I said, okay. And so immediately, that same evening, I went for the true cut analysis. This is done under anesthesia, where the tumor is removed a little bit and sent for testing, the result of which comes after 15 days. So another 15 days of suspense. I came back home with the small bandage across my left breast. And again, these days spent in prayers, pujas, visit to temples, and use of native medicines. My mother was not informed of all these developments till date. So finally, when she was told, she was eager to come so that she can help me. So she came down to Puttur with my children. I actually had to go to Mangalore to see my doctor on a Thursday. But on Wednesday, my husband had gone there and brought the report without my knowledge. So on Thursday morning, when we were planning to go, my husband suddenly said, why don't we take my uncle who was staying next door, Mr. Ravindra Rao. I was surprised. I said, why should we? Let's go by ourselves. Till now, we have been going like that. So let's continue. But then he said, no, let's take him for moral support. I said, okay. But at the same time, there was a small thing that was troubling me. And then I had made it a routine to say all the mantras, all the shlokas, Vishnu Sahasranama, right from Puttur to Mangalore. So I did that and we went to Mangalore. As soon as I entered the hospital, the first thing I see that my brother Santosh is already there. That was when I knew there was some trouble. There was a big problem. I almost knew my fate before we consulted the doctor. It actually happened that my husband had already got the report. He saw it was cancerous and he thought he may not be able to handle me. So he wanted support from my brother and my uncle. So finally with that report, I went to the doctor. He looked at it and he said, Sadhna, there is a small problem. That was when I heard my third, final and the last bell. I remember sitting in front of his table on a stool, my husband, my uncle, my brother, all sitting around me. But at that moment, I didn't hear anybody. I didn't see anybody. I didn't see anything. He was explaining something I didn't even want to hear. I only wanted this to be a dream from which I would wake up in some time. I didn't want this to be happening to me, but just wishing it, will it happen? I had wished a lot of things. Earlier, when I was in Bangalore, I wished, when I was testing myself, I wished it would just vanish. Sometimes I ignored it so that at least if I ignore it, it would disappear. But these things did not happen. These things don't happen. So Dr. Gatti kept on explaining things to me. I kept nodding my head without even looking at his face. I was so ashamed. I just lowered my head and was always nodding to whatever he said, which I didn't even hear, which I didn't want to hear. And then he asked me, do you have any doubts? Do you have some questions? I had a million questions in my mind, but the only thing I finally could ask was, can I go to the washroom? I went to the washroom, closed the door, leaned against the wall, and stared at the ceiling for a very long time. Totally blank mind, nothing going in my mind. And then finally, I washed my face and I came back and sat back in that stool. Now, I was not a mother. I was not a sister. I was not a teacher. I was not a daughter. I was not a sister-in-law. I was a nobody. Nothing mattered except the fact that I was a cancer patient. He kept telling me a lot of things, what the treatment methods are, how we will be going about doing all this, all the different tests that I'll have to undergo. He also told me that it's better I read some books written by cancer survivors like Lance Armstrong, etc., so that I can gain the courage. I just listened to him, but comprehended nothing. And then finally, it was decided that instead of delaying things, I would get admitted the very day. Delaying things would only weaken me emotionally. So, after making that decision, we went back to my brother Santosh's house for lunch. I went there and completely broke down. Raw, totally raw. I cried and cried and cried. For what? I don't know. I cried for myself. I cried for my fate. I cried for my family. I cried for the fact that I may not be living long. Miserable it was. But after that, I decided no more crying. Nothing. I have to fight and I will fight. I will do it for my family and myself. So I called up my school and informed them that I wouldn't be joining for another year. And then I started my fight against this disease, the war against this disease. It had to be fought physically, mentally, and emotionally. And then finally, during those days before my operation, I had to undergo various tests. Meanwhile, my brother Santosh had brought me Lance Armstrong book, and I kept reading it and making notes, extensive notes. I read it from cover to cover, made notes, formed my questions that I could ask my doctor, because he had told me, don't look into anything, don't ask anybody, just ask me any doubt you have. So I went on making notes, and every day he came, I used to ask him. He used to answer neatly. 2 days before my operation, he came and sat down with me and said a lot of things about how it is going to be after my treatment, after the chemotherapy and all that. Because it was decided that I would have to be operated on, and then afterwards, maybe I would have to undergo chemotherapy. But then he told me I would be losing my hair. I would be having only one breast, and a lot of things that are the effects of chemotherapy and the operation. And then that was when I realized he's telling me to me very nicely. He explained things and also gave me the real life situations. So I decided this similar way I'm going to talk to my daughter who was in her PU, second PU. Because I felt really relieved after Gatti spoke to me. So in the evening when she came along with the family, I sent everybody else and I sat my daughter over there and I started telling her everything. I told her what exactly is wrong with me, what exactly they'll be doing in the operation, and how much I will be suffering, and how much others, that is the family, will be suffering on my account. I also told her that she should not be using this as an excuse to not study and score less in her second PU. She is a good student, so I didn't want her to fall down because of that. I told her she had to look after her brother. She promised me everything, but one thing she asked me, Amma, can I cry once? My heart broke. But I said this would be the last time. And she has lived up to it. She scored more than 95% in her PU. And also she's been looking after her brother very well. That night, I prayed like never before. I prayed for myself, my life, then. And I also prayed for everybody around me who will be suffering in due course. Finally, on the day of my operation, again, there were a number of tests I had to undergo. And I was wheeled into the operation theater. But I was stationed in the ante room for some time, for almost 45 to 1 hour, along with my husband. But both of us silent. We were feeling certain emotions. We were undergoing certain emotions that we were not at all familiar about. And then operation was conducted, which took for almost 4 to 5 hours. In the evening, almost at the night, I was back into my ward. My brother, another brother, Vishwas, who had come down from Bangalore, and my husband, both of them stayed with me that night. I was in immense pain and nothing else mattered. I was completely under the influence of the anesthesia, but the only thing I felt was pain. I couldn't toss and turn without grumbling. So every time I did that, my brother would come neatly and shift me slowly on this side and that side. Finally, in the morning, I was feeling slightly better, and the nurse came to clean me, to give me a bath. I was completely ashamed then because I had no breast. There was only a tube coming out, which was attached to a bag to collect the lymphatic fluids. I felt extremely ashamed then. And then I was supposed to be in the hospital only for 7 days, as my doctor had told me initially. But there was a malfunction in this tube, and I ended up staying almost 2 weeks, 16 days. Meanwhile, suddenly one day, I realized that I couldn't lift my hand up more than this. That also came as a shock to me. So immediately I told the doctor, who sent the physiotherapist to help me with the exercises. Another time I realized that I have no sensation in this part of my arms. I was shocked, all negative thoughts coming into my mind again. Dr. Gatti told me that could be because during the surgery, some of the nerves also could have been damaged, but I may get the sensation after 3 to 6 months. But 7 years now, I still don't have any feeling in this area. But it's a very minor inconvenience for the fact that I'm able to live again. As the days neared my discharge, again I was very scared. I was very apprehensive. Till now, I was inside my 4 walls of the room, not moving outside at all, doing everything inside, walking, everything inside the room. Now suddenly I had to come outside, and I'm coming outside without a breast. That was really scary. How do I face people? How do I go to school? I was very, very tense. That was when Dr. Gatti suggested that I purchase prosthesis and before going back to Puttur. So that's what we did. And I was asked to come back after 20 days to get the result of my breast analysis and then consult a chemo doctor if necessary. So those 20 days period again was completely mixed emotions. In one way, I was happy. In another way, insecure. I was happy, assured that with the surgery, the offending lump was removed. But I didn't know whether this lump had spread. The infection had spread. And then again, confusion. We tried to spend our days as normal as possible. Once again, when I had to go to the hospital, that nervousness again began. Finally, we went back to the hospital with my report. I went to Dr. Gatti. He looked at it and told me that everything was clear. All the 16 nodes around the breast was clear of infection, which meant that the cancer had not spread. It was contained only there. So with the breast gone, I should be clear. But then he suggested that I undergo chemotherapy because he said, you're still young, 48 years young. And to avoid further relapses or further episodes, he said, it's better you take it. So I said, okay. And then he forwarded me to Dr. Dinesh Sheth, the oncomedicine. Dr. Sheth also explained a lot of things to me, telling me how the treatment is to go or will be going on. And he suggested that I take chemotherapy in 2 phases or 4 injections each with a gap of 21 days. He also told me that I had to take in sufficient food so that when I come for the next chemo, my blood would have the energy to take in all the chemicals. So that day, instead of just having come for the consultation, I went back after my first chemo. Taking the chemo was not at all a problem, was not at all painful. It was just like the drips which was given inside, only different colored juices. But its after effects was unbearable. I had a bloated stomach and I couldn't eat well. I couldn't walk. The doctor advised me to take antacids. It didn't work. He told me, walk. I couldn't walk because it was very painful. It was almost my bones were touching the ground. I had a lot of mouth ulcers everywhere possible, on the tongue, below the tongue, inside the cheek, everywhere. I couldn't eat anything. So I ended up drinking breakfast, drinking lunch and drinking dinner. In between, I used to take a lot of milkshakes, juices, bread, dosa, salads, whatever. I used to be constipated those days. My doctor suggested that I take papaya, ripe papaya in the evenings. So I took that also. So finally, I ended up taking from 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock in the night, continuously at the gap of 2 hours each. I'm taking the food using an alarm. I made sure I ate something, whether drinking or eating doesn't matter, but I had to take it. And probably because of this, I did not have to take any supplement for my energy during those days. The first part of the chemo was very difficult. I admit, I had a lot of problems with it. I used to develop a very high fever. I used to lose consciousness and I had to be rushed into the local hospital. And within first days after my first chemotherapy, I lost my hair. Not only on my head, even my eyebrows, eyelashes, all over my body. My routine used to be morning after all my food 2 times. I used to see off my husband to the office. then see off my children to school, and then sit in a place and wallow in grief, in self-pity. It was as if everybody had forgotten my existence. And this was when everybody was around me, despite the fact that everybody rallied around, my whole family. My mother, at the age of 75, she used to do everything for me from the morning till the night. And she really tried. For 1 month she was with me, but then due to her age, she couldn't manage it further. After that, it was my brother-in-law's wife, Mrs. Bharati, who used to come and stay with me for the first 10 days. And after she left, it was my uncle, who was my neighbor, Mr. Ravindra Rao and Mrs. Sita Lakshmi, who used to completely look after me and my family's needs, including my emotional health. Despite all this, I was always wallowing in self. My tongue, my nails, everything started looking blue. I had nothing to do. I could do nothing. Only thing I could do was do a lot of reading. I managed to read something around 60 to 80 books during those times. And also I started writing, sharing my experience of how I tried to overcome all this. My sister in the hospital, the nurse, she actually had told me to give an oil massage to my hand because I had to take injection on only one hand. This hand I could not use because of the operation. Because this is prone to infection, I had to always take it on my right hand. And when they insert the cannula, the medicine would not go in because the veins hardened. So she had asked me to give it an oil massage every time. So I had people, everybody doing things for me, but at the same time, I was totally upset. And then after the second chemo, I purchased a wig for myself because I was not at all confident of roaming without a wig or bald head. It was awkward, but I had to wear it. The second set of chemo was comparatively easier. I did not have much problems with it. I could manage to do a certain amount of work after the set of first 10 days. In the first chemo, I was really miserable. I had episodes of even feeling faint. I had to be walked around with support. But this was comparatively easy. And then finally, on 14th of November that year, I finished my last chemo. I had promised myself that 14th October would be the gift I would be giving my children. The doctor put me on hormone tablets, which I had to take for 5 years, and I was asked to come back for my checkup after 1 month. But again, going for the checkup also, you feel very nervous. But as Dr. Gatti had told me, this is something like an examination. Even the brilliant students, the intelligent students are tense during exam. This is something unavoidable. I have been going for my checkups regularly and also on my medicines. This is my story in brief. Now I would like to bring a few things to your notice. These are the things that I have learned during the most traumatic and trying period in my life. It was traumatic, but I have learned quite a few life lessons from it, which I want to share with you. Some of you who are watching this may be sufferers. Some of you may be knowing somebody, may know somebody who is suffering in the family or among your friend circle. And some of you may be just watching this. To those sufferers, I would like to give some words of advice. And to the others, I would like to give an insight to what exactly the patient feels and how to help them, what you can do to help them, and some sensitivities. First thing to remember is that cancer comes uninvited. So there is nothing to feel guilty, ashamed, or sorry about. It is not even a repentance or a punishment for the sins. There is a taboo attached to it, a stigma given by the society, but it still remains a disease which has to be fought. So with no negative feelings, just go to the doctor, consult the doctor, and immediately start the medications or whatever treatment the doctor advises. In this matter, the doctor knows better, so follow his advice completely. As my doctor said, it is best to rely on the doctor's advice. Clarify whatever doubts you have, however small, with your doctor, and not the Google and not others who may not know or comprehend what exactly you're going through. There may be a lot of people who will come and give you advice, free of cost, but always take it with a pinch of salt. You know your body, and the doctor knows the disease and the treatment. So trust the process. Healing takes a lot of courage, and healing mentally and emotionally takes a lot of time. Give it the time. Relax and learn to live with yourself. Learn to live and not only exist. Live for yourself. I'm sure your family and friends would also want the same from you. It is not going to be considered as selfishness. Secondly, I would like to tell the people who are suffering is never ever to give up. Life and your family are both worth fighting for. I know it is very easy to give up. The suffering makes you think so. I too have felt this when I was undergoing chemo. There were so many times I thought maybe dying would be easier than undergoing the torture of chemotherapy. There were times when I used to hallucinate a lot. It was very frustrating, very, very frustrating. But destiny is not in our hands, but our thoughts are. So keep it positive. Mental strength, positive attitude, and your family support can do big wonders for you. Besides, I have seen nowadays that the treatment is not as bad as it used to be. There is a lot of improvement in the medications and the treatments. I have seen treatments of some of my family members who haven't suffered as much as I had. So maybe it would not be that difficult. Third thing is, there is nothing wrong in taking help from others. Normally, we tend to hide this. We tend to keep it a secret. We don't want anybody to know about this disease. That is again because of the stigma attached to it. But believe me, in a nuclear family, it's going to be very difficult. So take help. Ask your parents, your in-laws, your brothers-in-law, your sisters-in-laws, your friends, your uncles, aunts, anybody to help you out. Besides, since this treatment takes a very long time, it becomes a big strain on the family. So when you take help from others, there is a distribution of this burden. It will relieve your family of major problem. And some people who are even hearing right now may want to help these patients, but don't know how to do it without hurting them, without hurting their sentiments, without offending them. So to those people, I would like to suggest, just be with them. Let them talk. Don't be judgmental or don't give advice. Just listen to them. They will tell you a lot about their suffering, the pain, the helplessness, the hopelessness, the uselessness they feel. They are going to vent it out. Allow them to vent it out, but don't be judgmental. Don't advise them. They are not in a state to take any of that. So just your presence, being with them, can be a big help to them, mentally and emotionally. The next thing I would like to tell is make sure that the patient eats sufficiently good and nutritious food. That is very important. When the chemicals, that is the medicines or the chemotherapy, when it enters your body, those chemicals are not able to identify the cancerous cells from the healthy cells, and it goes about its duty destroying it. So unless those healthy cells or the tissues are nourished properly to give them energy to fight, they are not able to do it. So it is very important to take good and proper food. Eat more bland foods, fruits, vegetables, salads, milkshakes. I used to take a lot of milkshakes, apple, pomegranate, chiku, anything, whatever you want. Avoid spicy, sour and bitter food. And junk food is a complete no. Let us not burden our body more than it can take. Besides, there may be times that you have no taste at all. You feel very bland in the mouth. But still take the food because your body needs it. It needs the nourishment. So even if you're not hungry, even if the food does not taste good, please remember that the body needs it. So take the food. There were days when I used to feel I was eating paper. My tongue, as I said, was blue. It was coated with something, so I had no taste at all. But I had made sure after my first chemo to regularly take something, either eat or drink something with intervals of 2 hours using an alarm. So I was nourishing myself completely. Please do that. Another thing is, after completing your chemotherapy or radiation, continue this kind of a food habit for some more time, maybe 6 months or a year. The body still requires it. Let us not give it a sudden halt to all these kind of a food that we are taking it. Because the body takes time to adjust to the normal diet that we are going to take. I used to in fact take my salads and milkshake even to my school to take it between classes so that I can continue nourishing my body for almost 1 year after the completion of my treatment. Another thing is, try to keep yourself engaged. Be busy doing something. If you're interested in the kitchen, do it. If you want to do gardening, do it. If you can go for your jobs, do it. I could not do anything. Only thing is, don't tire yourself. I needed help for everything. I could not do anything. So if you can do your work, go ahead, do it. But don't tire yourself. If you cannot do that, take up some other activities, some hobbies that you have not been able to do earlier, like gardening, drawing, painting, anything that you're singing, anything that you're interested in. I did a lot of reading and writing. I wrote my experiences, and then finally I was able to write a book and publish it in the form of You Can and You Have To. You can do it, you can fight it, and you have to fight it for your family. This is what I have shared in this book of mine. The family encouragement is very important in this. This is a request to all the family and the friends to help the patient find something interesting to do. Because at that moment, the patient is at the total lowest point. Low on energy, low on mental strength, low on emotional strength, a helplessness, a uselessness, everything inside it. So it's better the patient is encouraged to do something fruitful, something nice which the patient enjoys. It is very important to help in this matter. As I had breast cancer and my left breast was surgically removed, I found it very awkward to go outside to face people. I was insecure even facing my own family. That was when my husband brought me my prosthesis. I started wearing immediately after my operation. But wearing it for a long time, especially during summer, becomes very difficult because it becomes very hot and we tend to sweat. Another thing that happens is I cannot do anything bending down because it falls off. The hormones inside, the lack of hormones inside also plays a major role. I still have a little bit of facial hair. I have learned to adjust to all these facts. I know for a fact that this is not going to change. I am not going to become totally normal. I have to live with it. I have to accept it. These are all small inconveniences for the chance of being able to live again, to stay with the family. Change yours your families, your friends' outlook towards people who are suffering like this. There were times when I got laughed at for wearing a wig. I really wish people could be a little more sensitive in this regard. I have always told my story to all my students in all the classes I go, just to create this sensitivity. I have told them that the patients are already suffering mentally and physically. They are at all-time low. Let us not add to the burden. Let's not add to the pain or the hurt. Nobody wears it for fun. It's not easy. It is very awkward. Actually, I remember I cried when I looked at my face when I wore the wig for the first time. It did not look like me at all. Another thing very important in this, the patient first looks at the family to see the response, to see how the person is looking. Please remember, however funny the patient may look, however awkward the patient may look, please support. Please help the person out. It is very difficult, but please be with them. Lastly, my husband and I have always are always ready to help people who are going through this rough phase. My husband, in fact, has taken quite a few patients to their first, the most traumatic, most stressful, and the most scary consultation with the doctor, and later on to their chemo sessions also. Both of us are trying to do our whatever we can, and I hope I am doing justice to the second chance that I have been given in this beautiful journey of life. Please understand, this is not the end. Fight for something that is yours, your life. The family support in this issue can never be underestimated. The family also goes through a lot of adjustment, a lot of sacrifices. So it is important for all of you to be together. But believe me, all this is worth it for your life, for your family. We only get a chance to live once. So let us live and let us help others in this fight for their life. Thank you.